And we're like to review a pretty good episode of Twilight Zone. So I'm going to give you the opening narration by Rod Serling because it sort of leads into the plot. Then I'll describe the plot, and then I'll say what the closing narration is, and then over to Jeff for his thoughts. So let's see if I can get this right. Portrait of a town drunk named Al Denton. This is a man who begun his dying early, a long, agonizing route through a maze of bottles. Al Denton, who will probably give an arm or a part of his soul to have another chance, to be able to rise up and shake the dirt from his body and the bad dreams that infest his consciousness. Then it shows a shot of Henry J. Fate. In the parlance of the times, this is a peddler, a rather fanciful-looking little man in a black frock coat. A sixth gun materializes next to Denton, who's on the ground. And this is the third principal character of our story. Its function, perhaps to give Mr. Al Denton his second chance. Now, the plot summary. The setting is the Old West. Al Denton, once a feared gunslinger, now the town drunk, is forced to draw against Hotterling, a sadistic bully. But on the same day, Henry J. Fate rides into town. Somehow, Fate's glance gives Denton's hand a life of its own, and Denton gets off two miraculous shots, disarming his tormentor and regaining the respect of the town. His dignity renewed, he swears off liquor, but all too soon he finds himself in the same trap that drove him to the bottle in the first place. His newly won reputation causes a young hotshot to challenge him to a duel. Denton discovers, however, that his old ability is completely gone, and in desperation buys a potion. Now, this is where it's wrong, because we've just seen that it was free of charge from the guy, from the peddler. So, buys, in quotation marks, a potion from a Fate, guaranteed to give him 10 seconds of deadly accuracy. The moment his opponent enters the saloon, Denton downs the potion and sees the other man doing exactly the same thing. The two shoot the guns out of each other's hands, each sustaining an injury that will never allow him to shoot again. Denton, freed of ever having to face down another man, tells his adversary that they've both been blessed. And the closing narration is Mr. Henry Fate, dealer in utensils and pots and pans, liniments and potions, a fanciful little man in a black frock coat, who can help a man climbing out of a pit or another man from falling into one. Because, you see, fates can work that way in the Twilight Zone. Over to Jeff.
I mean, this reminds me of the Star Trek episodes that have Q, because it's like random guy with powers just makes something happen for whatever reason. And so it's like, okay. And um, the other thing I thought of is you talked about shooting the guns out of our hands. Where did the guns go? Because you don't, they don't show like guns go flying and hitting anything. It's just they're just gone.
Yeah, it might have also been good to like a little bit of blood as well in the hands.
Yeah, well, that's made it for a second. Not even sure exactly what occurred. Whether because it was like that, where it's just like they're holding their hands or whatever.
Yeah.
So that part was a little bit odd, but it's kind of one of those things where it's good and bad for the same reason, in that there's not much to it, but then the good thing is that it's short, so it doesn't get boring. So it's just kind of like this thing happens, and then okay.
Does it get SP points for the action?
Well, I mean, yes and no. It's like I said, there's not much action.
It's bangs though.
but I mean, it's not like there was a little bit more in the I mean, I guess that wasn't, officially a Twilight Zone episode, but that first thing that you showed me, the one with the guy at Pearl Harbor or whatever, there was a little bit
time
more.
element.
Yeah, because he like sort of got in a bar fight or whatever, or the bartender went after him, something like that. So
Yeah.
there's maybe a little bit more in that, but yeah, I mean, obviously there are elements, pretty much anything where there's like the showdown with the guns. It reminds me of something like High Noon or whatever, because obviously in that movie, the entire movie is carried by more of the anticipation of the showdown than anything else. And that's sort of the case in this, but it's only a couple minutes because it's short. So it's just like, it has the one twist of the other guy having the same potion. So it's, and that I remember from a long time ago seeing Twilight Zone, that's kind of a recurring thing with Twilight Zone, is setting up those particular types of twists where it's kind of like there's an equalizing factor of whatever it is somebody thinks their advantage is. So I would say if there's maybe a recurring theme that Serling likes to use, I mean, among others, but one of the main ones is that it's kind of that he does believe in some sort of balance of fate or whatever you want to call it, karma or whatever, that whatever advantage somebody thinks they're getting, that it's balanced by something else.
Yeah. I think the NFs and the SJs would like the morality part of it.
Well, and that's the thing, is it's kind of ambiguous what it is that he's going to do next, or what really the lesson is from it, because it's kind of like, okay, well, the young guy isn't going to be able to be a gunslinger, so he's probably not going to get killed in a gunfight, but then he might. Somebody might just decide to take him out, And the older guy, it's like, okay, well, he's not going to be a gunslinger. Is he going to go back to being a drunk? Well, probably not. But then what is he going to do? So they didn't exactly set up any kind of, they didn't exactly set up, any kind of great pathway for him. So I would say probably the NFs might be a little bit depressed by it, because there's not a lot of hope presented, but I guess it's sort of like you just have to make up your own idea for what the hope would be.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, it's like, okay, well, the young dude may not die from gunslinging, but he's going to die of something. So,
And now you've made his life a lot less exciting.
Yeah, what it's really been done here, other than just some things.
Right after they shoot the guns at each other, and the doctor just shows up and starts saying that everything.
You gotta speak up, or else I can't hear. Well, then there's no point in talking to me if you don't want to be heard. Anyway.
Is that what you said they? And I just thought, oh yes, there's two Bens here. Because of the login twice.
Well, no, I just meant like any potential audience that ever watches this.
Yeah, well, it does happen over there.
Yeah, we've even had live viewers before sometimes.
I'm going to give it NT points for the neat plotting and the peddler's strategy.
Is neat plotting an NT thing?
Well, what is it?
I would think.
It's the things we like.
That you would need the peddler's potion to make the dudes shoot each other, but then it didn't actually hit them. It just put a target on them, and then they could activate the target years later when they felt like it.
You keep going back to that gun that I love and you hate. Imipack, induced molecular instability projector and key.
A bunch of gibberish, because that's what NTs love, is technobabble.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought that was quality technobabble though.
Uh-huh.
Threatening each other with the possibility of pausing threatening each other.
Yeah.
I remember they had that gunfight, didn't they, in Blade
Well, a
7?
metaphor could be drawn between this and the nuclear age, and the U.S. and the Soviet Union facing each other with nuclear war, but then the peddler comes along and makes them damage each other's hands.
Yeah, I mean that kind of like metaphor is like obvious kind of thing that NS would read into, and SP has taken the mickey out of NS for reading it into it.
I guess who would the peddlers be? Reagan and Gorbachev? I don't know.
I don't know.
For that.
So there's. I got some notes. Have you ever seen the film? Because something similar. Have you ever seen the film with the orangutan with Clint Eastwood, Every Which Way But Loose?
No.
Well, in that film, do you want me to tell you? You're not about to watch it. Oh, it's got. So you might.
Yes, I'm about to
you
watch
and Morgan,
it. I'm just going to watch that just tonight.
Right, you and Morgan might like it because Clint Eastwood plays a bar fighter. He goes around and he challenges people to fights.
But does he say, first of all, you see this? Because I like my bar fights to start with that.
There's no potions in that one. And you've got the fact that you got this funny orangutan as well called Clyde. So what happened at the end of that film is that Clint Eastwood is about to beat Tank Murdoch. And people are saying, hey, this guy's the next Tank Murdoch. And Clint Eastwood's character realized that he doesn't want to be the next guy. He doesn't want to be an old guy with people coming around and challenging, and he ends up like being battered in some car park by some younger challenger. And so he deliberately throws the fight in order to get himself out of that situation of being constantly challenged. And this episode reminded me of that. So I suppose it's a kind of like I think personally Rod Serling personality type was SFP, but it's a kind of like NFE anti-violence kind of story. Little bits from this episode was I was good enough that every day somebody would ride into town and make me prove it. Initially, the peddler is the one who seems to be controlling the gun. Then I mentioned the Tank Murdoch thing, Every Which Way But Loose. I like the bit where he talked about killing the 16-year-old who challenged him. And he sort of realised in hindsight, because he was a bit drunk at the time. I like the name of the peddler as Henry J. Fate. Yeah, and then the bit about the 10 seconds being added in order to help with the twist ending, in order so that they then drink it straight before, and then that can be done like silently, just visually, a nice visual twist. And I thought it was well directed as well, with the the little canisters of drink. Yep. Oh yeah, then you got Doug McClure who plays Grant at the end. I don't know if you've seen any Doug McClure films, Jeff.
I don't either.
Used to be in those ones like the 60s and 70s, like weird ones like Atlantis, things like that, and going or ones with dinosaurs. Bits from
the name I recognized from the cast was Martin Landau.
Yeah, it was the the sort of ESTP guy dressed in black.
Sort of ESTP. You're talking about the dude at the beginning?
Yeah, the guy that's dressed in black.
Calling him Rummy and stuff?
Yeah. Oh, it says here that the guy...
Your bias is showing. Yeah, any guy who's like bullying people, he calls an ESTP guy.
I said sort of.
Sort of, yeah.
then we've got and then we've got the guy that played the good guy, Denton, so to speak. Apparently, what he writes here, years before Deria had made his reputation in films playing thoroughly detestable weasel types. I just thought I just like that phrasing, thoroughly detestable weasel types. And then there was a bit at the end that surprised me. Alan Reisner, the director of the Time Element, skillfully guided this episode away from cliche and maudlin. And I just wondered, well, how did he do that? Did he like rewrite the script? What exactly did he do that steered it away from cliche and maudlin? So I don't know how much.
I mean, I don't know, because some of that's just the fact that the format, you know, the time is short enough that you don't have a lot of time to draw stuff out.
Yeah.
So it kind of lends itself to that. It's like I've talked about how some of the radio shows I've listened to from, you know, even before this era, you know, from like the 40s and stuff, like the Superman radio show. One reason it's ineffective, as effective as it is it's like 15 minutes long, and it's really less than that because they have commercials too, so it's closer to 10 minutes. And when you have something that short, you can keep the suspense up basically through the whole thing because you don't have to have any down period.
Right.
You know, you think about it. You know, when you've got about 10 minutes of showtime, about the first 2 minutes is recapping the last episode, and then the last 2 minutes is setting up the cliffhanger for the next one. So that's almost half of it right there. So you really only have to come up with 5 or 6 minutes of actual plot.
Is it usually though part of a serial?
Right.
Right. That makes a big difference in my mind.
Yeah, and that's why I, you know, like that better. It's kind of like, you know, even like comics, where you've got, you know, talking about like in the newspaper.
Ah, right,
you know,
gotcha.
because you have like the daily thing that's just like one frame, and then Sunday you've got maybe 3 or 6 or whatever, you know. And so anyone who's actually following a continuing story is a really small bit at a time. So you don't have to come up with much. You just have to keep the story going.
That would suit you.
Yeah, that's perfect actually for me. That's why I've talked about doing like a, you know, a radio serial type of thing, because I feel like I could do that. I've got a lot of material to draw from. You know.
And I can, and as you said, I think you've cast me as guy who can do Oraki type voice.
Yeah. So I'd have to figure out how I could use that.
Right. So, what do you give this out of 10?
I would say 6.
Ooh.
Because it's kind of like I said with the I don't remember the title, but the first episode with the guy that was in the military experiment or whatever. That
Yeah, where is everybody?
It holds my attention the whole time, but there's nothing that like is particularly spectacularly compelling about it. So it didn't drag on and feel boring, but it also didn't like overwhelm me with any kind of particular impact. So.
Right.
So I would say out of the 3 episodes so far, the second one was the best, because I think I gave that one a 7. It was a little bit better.
Yeah, one for the Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah. I give this one 10. So
what? Because you didn't say a whole lot about it. What is it that you find so overwhelmingly great that it's a 10?
I like the plotting and the morality part of it. And also the little bit where he talks about, you know, why he got himself into that state with the shooting of the 16-year-old. So, I'm a sucker for a good twist ending. I like a good ending. I really do.
Okay.
Like I said, NT points for the plotting.
Without
like,
even
like
having
suspense and
a
mystery.
delayed weapon.
Pardon? I mean, generally though, what do you like in a story? Because this sort of highlights a little difference between us.
What I like in a story.
But let's say in Doctor Who, what particular plots do you like in Doctor Who?
Well, I guess just something where there's interesting characters. I like suspense. I like some sort of mysterious elements. I like things where it's not as predictable or sort of telegraphed or whatever. Where it's see the story itself can be straightforward. It doesn't have to have like 16 twists or whatever, but it needs to have something that kind of reaches out and grabs me and says, "Here, this is worth paying attention to. Something interesting is happening."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So on a character level, I thought that One for the Angels was better with Lou Bookman.
Yeah, I think because the length is the same, and yet they were able to put more into his character, I think, in the short time they had to establish who he was. Still not a whole lot, but a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the pacing was a little bit better with that one because it managed to pull off, seeming like they got all the information they need to get out, but also not feel rushed in any way either.
Right.
And this felt shorter to me, this episode today, because it just sort of seemed like set him up as the drunk who used to be the gunfighter, have the one scene in the bar, and then he says somebody's going to come to challenge him again. The very next scene, somebody does, or somebody is announcing they're going to.
Yeah.
Then it's the in-between scene with the peddler, and then it's the showdown. And then, 10-second wrap-up. So so it's just kind of bing, 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 bing. All right, there you go. And I think it's a little bit cheesy having the guy named Fate. It's kind of like, oh, okay. Fate stepped in. Good one there, It doesn't mean I don't enjoy it, but it's still like, I guess I like things to be a little more subtle sometimes, maybe.
Right. Right. Okay. But you also sometimes you like a mystery, don't you?
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing with us, folks. You never know who will like what, and then sometimes we will like the same things.
True.
So there's a little bit of suspense there for the audience.
Oh, I was going to say the thoroughly detestable Weaselly, or what is that what you said?
Yeah. Yes.
That's all right, but it's no 5'0" weedy bimbo nutbag.
Yes.
That's still better.
Yes, that is better. Right there. So on that note, from the book, the Blake 7 guide, I forgot what it is maximum power. That's it. If you want to get it, folks, maximum power. All the proceeds go to charity for that. Or at least all the author's profits go to charity.
I was going to say charity of keeping the authors eating.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably do other things. Now then, so I'll stop this at the moment. So bye-bye, folks.
Okay, bye.